Hello everybody, we're going to do something different today. As you can see, I have Flash open. RIP, right? Still work in Flash when it comes to drawing. Still what I'm most familiar with. All the programmers that I work with do not really use Flash anymore. Obviously it's obsolete, but I'm very comfortable in it and I still use it to draw. Look at, I draw really well. See these things? Today I'm going to do like a little trip down memory lane, I guess. There wasn't much development updates for the 3 years that this was in development. We just started doing them now. So I'm going to go through and give you all the details so you can say, it looked better with this, or this was a better idea, or you should re-add that. When the reality is you're wrong and I'm not gonna, so don't ask. But either way, we'll start out with the past. So those of you who have followed me for years know James as the guy that did all those cool trailers for my games. He did the initial Super Meat Boy teaser, which was, I think it's still up online. I'm sure it's on his YouTube page. It's of this guy who eats Meat Boy. And it actually is James eating Meat Boy, and he's all deformed and has crazy teeth. That was the teaser for Meat Boy, and then he did the actual release trailer, which was really cool. It was a 90s trailer. And then he did the Binding of Isaac trailer, which was a play off of the original Zelda commercial. And he did a shitload more over the years, which were all great and amazing. My personal favorite was the Rebirth. I think no, it was Afterbirth trailer with all the naked people dancing around. It was total chaos, and no one would put it on their blog. It was a great choice, but it was great. I liked it. So I knew James as an artist, even though he worked as a programmer. And after doing a bunch of trailers together, we always fiddled around with the idea because he was interested in making games himself. We thought, we can make a game together at some point. And we made a game called Fingered, which I should have probably drawn in here. I'll draw a finger. That's a finger. This is a finger. That's a finger. That's blood. There's blood there. So we made a game called Fingered, and we made it over a couple months, and it was a really small game. We just popped it up on Steam for a few bucks. People seemed to enjoy it. It was enjoyable to work on, and then shortly after that, we're like, well, should we do something else? We should do another smaller game, but maybe not that small. Maybe work on it for 6 months to a year or something. And we came up with this game idea. It's, as you can see, it's self-explanatory. It was a hobo game where you had a puzzle board down here, which was inside of a trash can, and you would match 3. I think initially it was 3, possibly 4. You'd match 3 of a certain type, and it would give you some sort of power up, some sort of attack, defensive, a maneuver, and you would throw it at these other hobos that were trying to get your trash. And you're trying to either dig down to coins or booze, and the coins you'd use to buy booze, and it was just a survival type. It was a very quick idea, and it was something we could have probably done in a few months. All the art was going to look like marionette puppets in 3D. So you'd have these suspended, randomly generated hobos coming at you, and you were just scrambling around trying to match stuff and keep them back until you could get down to the bottom. So it was more of just a straightforward match type game. I know I'm selecting stuff like this. I don't know why I'm doing that. It's just something I'm idling. I'm stimming doing this. But that was the initial idea. And I was working with somebody at the time who was like, why don't you just make it slap an Isaac IP on that thing and it would sell like hotcakes. And I was like, that's funny. And then I started thinking about it, like how could I do that if I wanted to? How could I put the Binding of Isaac on top of this hobo game? And then I remember one of my favorite characters in the game, which was something that everybody was talking about, especially on Reddit, was Bumbo, which had initially released at that time. And all the little bum friends were always my little favorites in the game. So I kind of redesigned that idea and explored the design a bit more. And I thought, could I take the Binding of Isaac's theme and could I remake it as a turn-based puzzle game, roguelike type thing? I don't know what to call it. The closest I could come was something like Puzzle Quest. And so I sketched some stuff up and I was like, how would it look? We could do like a diorama type look. And when that was initially explored, the idea of doing a cardboard diorama, we both agreed that it was perfect because James and I both kind of grew up with limited resource kind of stuff and we were both creative. So paper and cardboard and dioramas and stuff. And I, cardboard boxes are also a theme in my past games. It just seemed too perfect to kind of pass up. So we decided we would kind of make it all take place in a cardboard box and everything would kind of have a paper or cardboard aesthetic. And I think initially it was like a paper. And then I think James suggested we do everything full on cardboard cutouts. And we played around with the idea of hinges and whatever else. But this is the initial concept drawing. As you can see, there's a lot of things that were different. A lot of things that made it through to the final game. But for the most part, it was an Isaac room structure. You had a big old board with a bunch of different things on it. It looks like there were eyeballs and guts. Eyeballs, guts, teeth. I don't know. Teeth were yellow then. Teeth, poop, boogers. It didn't really matter back then. I didn't know what I was doing. And then the initial spells with different mana costs. Not sure what that was. And then trinkets, which all kind of made it through. And we kind of took that initial concept and kind of ran with it a little bit. I started to redesign. I wasn't really happy with, of course, the initial sketches. I started to try to fill them out a bit more, move things logically where they should be, redesign the HUD a little bit so it looked more pretty, and try to figure out how the enemies would look, how they would work. I initially was just stuck in this, I'm used to animating it, I'll just animate them aesthetic. But James wanted to do it all real cardboard, like real hinged cardboard, and try not to fake anything. So everything that we put in, we tried to make it make sense. We initially played around with a lot of Scotch tape, which I think we cut later because it just made things take too long to add so many details. We even played around with having like damage on the cardboard over time show the damage to the enemy instead of doing a number, a bunch of other stuff like that. I started redesigning the pieces. I made them more aesthetically pleasing and muted the colors, of course, which is what I do. We also wanted to make sure that each of the icons made sense to some degree. I think like bones and teeth are hard things that you could throw at people to damage them, and boogers obviously are sticky, and poop could be like a wall of defense, and P was the symbol of urgency. So I thought, okay, well, it would give you movement points, and that would be like, you got to pee, so it makes you move faster as you do. And of hearts, that was a given. I started messing around with like what things would look like design-wise in the game. I tried to simplify things to make it look more like a child had drawn them. And then the kind of concept we were messing around with initially and made it through to the final was I would kind of outline everything. I'll show you. I'll actually just draw it. I approached everything like this. So it's like, here's the face. Here's Bumbo's face, right? And then I go and get a peach, and then I kind of color it in like a crayon, and I do everything behind it, and I fill it in a good amount, right? And I don't care if I go over the lines, that's fine. And then I come through, because the concept of this would be that you have drawn on a piece of paper and then cut the piece of paper out. So you cut around that paper, and then it has this kind of cut out paper aesthetic. And then you paste that on a piece of cardboard and kind of cut out the cardboard. So if this was the cardboard, it'd be like, and you'd have this very rough, childlike aesthetic, which was perfect. And that's definitely what we went with. But you can see by these initial concepts, it still was, I was messing too much around with these one-dimensional flat surfaces. And James pushed me to try it, because I never really worked in 3D, to try more 3D looking enemies. Enemies that bent, like there's worms in the game that kind of bend forward. We had an early concept where this thing was all rolled up, and at the very least depth. So I took something like a gaper and redesigned it so it had its own aesthetic and to the Bumbo theme, basically. And these are called Tato Kids, which are essentially gapers. And I took their head and body and made them hinged, basically, on this point. And then James went in and animated that so it could rock back and forth, and its head would rock side to side. And you can tell that these were different dimensions of cardboard stacked on each other in the environment. It looked really cool, too, especially when you added shadows and texture of the cardboard to the paper. And here's like the initial concept too. Once we actually had things in game, you can kind of see the early stages of development. We had more aged cardboard. Things were more damaged some places. And the big changes with things were really detailed initially. I covered the walls with everything, which looked great. And I'm not going to deny the fact that it looks really nice. But you can see the initial concept of like the sewer was hyper detailed compared to what it is now. There was different, it was super, super drawn. And while that does look good, it wasn't the aesthetic that I really wanted. Like it looked too much like my drawings and less like a cardboard box. It looked too complicated for the childlike style, too busy, and too immersive in a way that I didn't want. I understand like you're Bumbo and you're going through tunnels and whatever else, but I still didn't want to break the cardboard aesthetic. So we tried to play around with a more simplified version. And you can see here the HUD changed to be more cut out cardboard. We still have a little bit of like wear and tear places, which looks great. And then the board itself here, you can see down here, it was like really warped, and which wasn't as visually pleasing to me, even though I understand why it looks good. But we kept stripping it down and simplifying it more and more. I wanted to rely more on the cardboard itself to kind of sell it, like more cardboard dimension. You can see here's like it pops out a bit more here, and mess around with HUD stuff. Another thing we did with the cardboard aesthetic was we wanted the animations to make sense. So everything in the game, like Bumbo and whatever else, or stuff that cuts back from the box, is on a dowel or a stick or string or something along those lines. And most of the enemies that have animations actually have two sides, especially Bumbo. So you can see here that behind here, you can see another cardboard cutout. That's because there's another Bumbo, another animation state, which is actually, I wish I could flip it, a Bumbo throwing. And what we do in these situations is we flip Bumbo around. You can actually see that. I use that in the trailer, in the live action trailer in real life. I had two sides to all the Bumbos and on the dowels, and I would flip them back and forth to show animation. And then we tried to do that as much as possible in game where, if something drastic changed, especially with Bumbo, it would flip. Like in character, the character select, you can see that the character flips around to change its animation state. I thought that was really neat. We did as much of that as we possibly could. Not many people will notice, but it's super neat. And I haven't seen anybody else do that. Initially, the game had exploration. And this is the one that I've talked about, and people are like, why'd you cut exploration? And trust me when I say we spent a good year adding exploration. And we cut it all. It was sometimes when you're making a game and the game's coming together, the concept's coming together, you know, from all your sketches and all your ideas, and it seems like it works. And then you take a step back and you realize that there are aspects of the game that make the game bloated and unfocused. You could say something akin to like if in Super Meat Boy there were levels where there was like some sort of mini game where it was actually part of the game, where like you got to a part and you were no longer platforming. It took you completely out of the platforming experience and you had to do something else. And I know they do that in games, but I am not a fan of that. I like to stick to my guns, stick to the core. And we had a full exploration, just like Isaac. There were a bunch of different rooms. There were too many rooms. The finishing one chapter would take 45 minutes. Playing multiple rooms in a row felt not fun. Finding treasure rooms felt not fun because you want to get that reward and you're not sure where it is, and you just have to keep, you know, fighting things. It's just surprisingly unfun. Finding shops and then having to like go back and forth and travel around this board, even with the shortcuts that we messed with, weren't fun. And we actually made traps. These were full on rendered spike traps. So certain areas were more dangerous to go through. You take some damage. There were keys we played around with. There were multiple mini puzzles that we fucked around with. And there were even NPCs that you had to like escort places or bring them specific things. All of this stuff did not work to the core of the game. And it took me a good 6 or 8 months to realize like, wait, like in order for this game to be fun, it needs to stick to its guns when it comes to it's a puzzle game. It's a mini roguelike type experience, and it's about strategy. It's not about exploration. And it's less about random than Isaac. And that was something that I had to accept and realize, you know, well, there was a lot of work that was put into all this, but to make the game better, it has to go. So we trimmed the fat big time. We removed a great deal of stuff and finally tuned it down to this. And you can see it with the visual as well. So the concepts I showed you before, everything was hand drawn on the walls. It was really detailed and whatever else. We kind of stripped that out, cut that back into mostly cardboard. You can see the different layers of age and depth when it comes to the walls, which are just kind of like randomly thrown everywhere. The rocks on the walls. You can see the cardboard grass coming up through the ground, the rocky structure around the doors, and then of course the HUD, which we pulled out to make it feel more immersive. So you've got this themed HUD depending on where you're at that kind of pulls you in to the environment, I think, more without losing the cardboard aesthetic. And we simplified as much stuff as we possibly could so it was more straightforward and to the point. So for the past 2 months and currently now we're crunching. The game took a while to come together to finally trim all the stuff out that wasn't needed. And for the past couple months, we've just been focusing on tightening it up and developing until the end. We are going to be crunching until the very end, until release, get as much stuff as we possibly can in. We've got 8 days until launch, and we still need to add a bunch of sound effects and polish, and a few little things like the intro credits, and some menu systems. And then it's just bug fixing and testing. All the items are essentially in at this point. I can count. I don't have a number on me, but it's quite a lot. We added more than we initially stated, I believe. And I'm super happy with it. Like this is one of few games where we have about 20 testers currently that are playing the game, and it's a situation where the majority of the testers seem to really like playing the game, and less about testing and more about playing the game for hours. And a lot of the testers have, like even Danielle right now is downstairs playing Bumbo for fun. Rarely get bug reports from her, but that's fine. I mean, I get enough information by watching her play and know what works and what doesn't. But we're still tuning, tweaking, and trying to balance out the difficulty, because one of the most difficult things for me design-wise was making sure that this game was difficult. Not punishingly difficult, but difficult enough to keep you on your toes and never feel bored. And that was really, really difficult to do. It was very hard to balance it so you weren't just getting screwed over every single time. And it also wasn't a walk in the park where it felt like you were just going through the motions and killing everything in the room, kind of like OP Isaac stuff. And I still wanted you to be able to find item combos that made it almost feel like you were just walking through the rooms doing nothing, but with a little bit of work put into it. And I'm still doing that now. I'm still trying to make sure that all the bosses are unique and difficult, and all the items are interesting and they talk to one another, etc., etc. And one of the things early on that I didn't really talk about was the draft system. Initially, the concept was Puzzle Questy match. It was match 4, Puzzle Questy match 4 to fuel your spells system. Except it wasn't so much a character-based system, but more of a draft system. So every time you would play, out of the hundreds of items that were in the game, every treasure room would give you a choice of 2. So you'd be able to kind of choose the archetype that you want to go down. You'd choose the items that would complement other items, or choose the items that would fill holes in your spell deck or spell lineup. And that was the main concept going in. And now we've kind of got it finely tuned with a range of different spell effects and spell types. The game releases, like I said, 8 days, next Tuesday, the 12th. And I'm super excited. I really want to know what you guys think. We're trying to get all the bugs out so you guys won't be banging your heads against the table when something doesn't work as intended. But of course, just like all the games in the past, we will be updating and making sure everything is working as intended. If all goes well, I'm sure there'll be a little mini update in the future with maybe a little bit more content. And if you guys really like it, of course, there'll be eventually a DLC. So hopefully everything goes well. It releases on Steam on PC on the 12th. We're going to probably start taking pre-orders in 2 days on Wednesday, the 6th. And I think there's going to be a discount if you pre-order it, as well as if you get it early regardless. So there'll be like a small discount if you pre-order it, as well as a discount if you get it within the first week. In the future. Well, I kind of talked about the future, but the future is in your hands. This week, I'm going to be doing a bunch of press stuff. Have an interview with James and the Escapist today, and I hope to do a bunch more interviews in the future. If you have a website that you would like to interview us or preview the game or anything else along those lines, we've got 8 days. So feel free to ping them, tell them that you want to hear about Bumbo or whatever, or if you're press yourself, just contact me at edmund@edmundm.com, and I will reply probably. If you're somebody who's just asking for codes for your Let's Play and whatever else, we're not going to give out codes early. That's for sure. And I get literally 5 to 10 daily of people just saying, hey, I've got this channel when I have 1,000 people and I want this. And, I love to support all that sort of stuff too. But when you get so many requests that are similar, just don't feel bad if I don't reply to you. I I will do contests and stuff like that on Twitter and make sure people get codes. But I hope this was informative. I hope it gives you a feel of why the game took 3 years to make, and the choices that we had, the very difficult choices that we had to make over those years. And I hope you enjoy the game. This is Edmund McMillen, and this isn't much of a let's play. What is this? This is a let's look into the past and the future. Development, Legend of Bumbo. I'll see you later.